Ukraine's Independence Day in August 2025 should have been a jubilant celebration of freedom, unity, and resilience. A day when the nation could come together to honor its hard-won sovereignty and look forward to a brighter future. The streets of Kyiv were adorned with blue and yellow flags, and the air was filled with the sounds of music, laughter, and hope. For many, it was a rare moment to forget the hardships of war and embrace the spirit of independence. But this year, the festivities were abruptly overshadowed by a chilling accusation from Moscow, casting a long shadow over the celebrations and plunging the nation into uncertainty. Russian officials claimed that Ukrainian forces had launched a drone attack on the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant, Europe's largest atomic facility and a critical piece of infrastructure. The news sent shockwaves through the country and beyond. The timing of the accusation was no coincidence. It was a pointed, provocative message delivered on a day meant to symbolize Ukrainian sovereignty and national pride, turning a moment of unity into one of fear and suspicion. Instantly, the world's attention shifted from the vibrant parades to the terrifying prospect of a nuclear incident. News outlets across the globe interrupted regular programming to cover the unfolding crisis, and social media erupted with speculation and concern. The Zaporizhzhia plant, under Russian occupation since the early days of the war, has long been a flashpoint for international anxiety. Its strategic importance and vulnerability have made it a symbol of the broader dangers of the conflict. The claim wasn't just another piece of wartime propaganda, it tapped into deep generational fears, instantly evoking haunting memories of the Chernobyl disaster. For many Ukrainians, the specter of nuclear catastrophe is all too real. A nuclear power plant is not a conventional target. Any disruption, whether accidental or intentional, could unleash catastrophic consequences not just for Ukraine, but for all of Europe. The mere suggestion of an attack was enough to send emergency services on high alert. The accusation highlighted the plant's extreme vulnerability and raised urgent, unsettling questions about safety, responsibility, and the sanity of waging war around such dangerous infrastructure. Could anyone truly control the risks? Was this a real attack, a provocation designed to escalate tensions, or a calculated fabrication meant to manipulate global opinion? The world demanded answers, but clarity was hard to find amid the fog of war. As news alerts spread rapidly, international leaders were forced to respond. They balanced condemnation of any potential attack with urgent calls for evidence and restraint, knowing that any misstep could have dire consequences for millions. For ordinary Ukrainians and their neighbors, Independence Day became a stark reminder that their fight for freedom now carried the terrifying shadow of potential nuclear disaster. The hope and pride of the day were replaced by anxiety and a renewed determination to endure, even as the threat of catastrophe loomed ever closer. To truly grasp the weight of Russia's claim over Zaporizhzhia, we need to look beyond the headlines and understand what's really at stake here. The Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant isn't just another industrial site, it's a critical pillar of Ukraine's infrastructure and a symbol of national pride. As Europe's largest nuclear facility, it once supplied more than a fifth of Ukraine's electricity, lighting up millions of homes and powering industries across the country. Whoever controls Zaporizhzhia holds the keys to Ukraine's energy grid. This isn't just about electricity. It's about leverage, influence, and the ability to shape the daily lives of millions. Since seizing the plant, Russian forces have used it as a strategic shield, fully aware that Ukraine would be reluctant to risk a nuclear disaster by launching attacks nearby. The city of Enerhodar, purpose-built for plant workers and their families, fell to Russian control in March 2022. This was a major blow not just militarily but psychologically for Ukraine. Since then, Ukrainian staff have continued to operate the plant, but now under the watchful eyes of Russian commanders. This has created a tense, high-pressure environment where mistakes could be catastrophic. The plant has faced repeated disconnections from the national grid, forcing it to rely on emergency generators. An unsustainable situation that brings the constant risk of a nuclear meltdown ever closer. Its robust Soviet-era design was never intended to withstand the chaos of war. Ongoing shelling, power cuts, and the threat of sabotage have made the situation increasingly perilous for everyone involved. The latest accusations of drone attacks are just the newest chapter in the dangerous weaponization of a civilian nuclear facility, transforming what was once a symbol of progress and power into a source of international anxiety and fear. Russia's accusation was detailed and designed for maximum impact. Moscow alleged Ukrainian drones struck the plant, calling it nuclear terrorism timed for Independence Day. Russia insisted radiation levels were normal, but the narrative painted Ukraine as reckless and dangerous. This serves Moscow's goals, delegitimizing Ukraine, justifying its own actions, and pressuring the world to accept Russian control. The timing was psychological warfare, meant to sow fear and undermine Ukrainian unity. By invoking the specter of nuclear disaster, Russia aims to shift global opinion and force negotiations on its terms. Independence Day is Ukraine's most important holiday, a symbol of its break from centuries of Russian domination. Since the invasion, the day has become a somber reminder of sacrifice and resistance. Instead of parades, Kyiv displays destroyed Russian hardware, a defiant message to the world. By 2025, the war had become a brutal stalemate, with both sides fighting for every inch. Any military action on this day is highly symbolic. For Ukraine, a show of resolve. For Russia, a chance to spoil the celebration. The accusation of an attack on Zaporizhzhia fits this pattern, tarnishing a day of pride with the threat of catastrophe. It's a reminder that Ukraine's fight for independence is now inseparable from the risk of nuclear disaster. The world can't hear nuclear plant and Ukraine without thinking of Chernobyl. The 1986 disaster remains the worst in history, its legacy a warning of what can go wrong. Chernobyl led to mass evacuations, long-term health crises, and a global reckoning on nuclear safety. Zaporizhzhia's reactors are safer by design but not built for war. A direct hit or loss of power to cooling systems could still trigger a meltdown. The plant has repeatedly lost grid connection, relying on vulnerable backup generators. Even without a direct strike, the risk of a prolonged blackout is a nightmare scenario. Nuclear safety protocols exist for a reason, but war makes them nearly impossible to guarantee. The stakes are not just local, they're continental. The Zaporizhzhia incident produced two predictable narratives. Russia cast itself as the responsible guardian, blaming Ukraine for nuclear blackmail. This is part of a broader strategy: create confusion, deflect blame, and normalize occupation. Ukraine, meanwhile, responded with strategic silence, refusing to legitimize what it calls Russian propaganda. Kyiv insists Russia is endangering the plant by militarizing it and staging false flag incidents. Ukraine's message: only a Russian withdrawal and IAEA oversight can ensure safety. The information war is as fierce as the battle on the ground. The accusation sent shockwaves through the international community, reverberating from the halls of the United Nations to the offices of world leaders across the globe. As news broke, diplomats and officials scrambled to understand the full scope of the situation, aware that the implications could be far-reaching and severe. The UN and the International Atomic Energy Agency, both with monitors already on site, moved quickly to assess the situation firsthand. Teams of inspectors and scientists worked around the clock, reviewing radiation data and ensuring that safety protocols were being followed. Their mission was clear: to verify the facts and prevent panic from spreading. World leaders, especially those in Europe who are most at risk from any potential fallout, issued urgent calls for restraint and transparency. Press conferences were held, and statements released, emphasizing the need for open communication and international cooperation to avoid escalation. The message from the global community was unmistakable. Military activity near nuclear plants is not only reckless but utterly unacceptable. Protests erupted outside nuclear facilities, with citizens demanding stronger safeguards and accountability. This alarming incident underscored just how vulnerable the continent remains, highlighting the urgent need for de-escalation and renewed diplomatic efforts. The shadow of nuclear disaster loomed large over European cities, reminding everyone of the stakes involved. Weaponizing a civilian nuclear plant sets a dangerous precedent, one that could have dire consequences for future conflicts. The very idea threatens to blur the line between civilian infrastructure and military targets, increasing risks for millions. If such actions go unchecked, they could undermine decades of progress in global nuclear security and non-proliferation efforts. The international community faces a critical test of its resolve to uphold these vital norms. In the best-case scenario, the claim proves false, serving as a wake-up call and leading to renewed pressure on Russia to demilitarize the plant and restore trust in international agreements. The worst-case scenario, however, is far more dire. Continued attacks could trigger a catastrophe, risking not only environmental disaster but also direct confrontation between Russia and NATO forces, with unpredictable consequences. Ultimately, the stakes extend far beyond Ukraine's borders. The world is watching, and the outcome will shape the future of international security for years to come. In war, truth is elusive, especially in the fog surrounding Zaporizhzhia. Both sides wage relentless information campaigns, making independent verification nearly impossible. The IAEA's access is limited by Russian control, and their reports, while vital, can't always reveal the full picture. Satellite imagery, official statements, and open-source intelligence each offer clues, but none are definitive. This information vacuum allows both sides to push their own narratives. The confusion benefits the aggressor, making decisive international action harder. That's why a neutral, evidence-based approach is essential, distinguishing what's known from what's claimed. The search for truth isn't academic, it's crucial to preventing escalation and holding the right parties accountable. The Zaporizhzhia accusation is more than a headline, it's a warning. It fuses the dangers of modern warfare, nuclear technology, and disinformation into a single existential threat. A severe accident would devastate not just Ukraine, but all of Europe. The world must pay attention because the stakes are global. The dilemma: respond forcefully and risk escalation, or rely on diplomacy that so far failed to secure the plant. This crisis exposes the limits of current international security structures. Nuclear facilities must never become tools of war. The world's response will test our collective wisdom and will to survive. The safety of Zaporizhzhia is a global issue, not just a Ukrainian one. Ignoring this warning could have consequences for generations.